What's up, guys? In this video we are going to talk about gearing your character for torment level difficulty, especially if you have a freshly minted 70. What I'm thinking about doing is just leveling a class to 70 and showing you in a video how I would gear it initially if I didn't have any alts. But for now, I'll just give you a basic rundown of skills or affixes and attributes on gear, and how you should go about approaching those as you get upgrades on your items. Now this is just going to be a generalization, and as we go through each slot we'll talk a little bit more about specific scenarios you could have, because it's going to change with every class, but for the most part most of what I'm telling you here will hold true. One thing is, on every piece of gear you should aim to get your primary stat. So for witch doctors and wizards you should try to get intelligence. For crusaders and barbs you should try to get strength, and for monks and demon hunters you should try to get dex on every piece of gear. Okay, and the reason for that is because your primary stat also gives you additional bonuses per point, so it's just worth it. You get the most value out of it. Now, another thing I want to talk about before we get into more detail is movement speed. Movement speed caps out at 25% normally, right? That said, you can either get movement speed one of two ways. You can get it from Paragon points, or you can get it from gear. I suggest that you do not get it from gear. If you do get them from gear, you should always re-roll movement speed for something else that you need. Okay, and now let me explain why. Here I have movement speed on boots, 11%. The cap for that is 12% on the boot slot. So, in terms of Paragon points, how much is 12%? Right? 12% is 24 Paragon points. Okay? So, if I didn't have the movement speed, and instead I went with the primary stat, which is like strength, right, or intelligence, that movement speed is equal to 120 intelligence. Now the thing is, on gear, when you roll those intelligence spots, you can get it from above 400 to 500, or your vitality, you can get it from 400 to 500. So the value per point of movement speed is not as valuable. Instead of wasting an affix here in movement speed, I should re-roll it to something else, and I can just max my movement speed by putting the points here as in my Paragon points. Okay, so that's something I wanted to address early before we talk about the other things. So now let's talk about the three. In general, you can kind of break down the gear into three major pillars. Okay, there's the defensive pieces, there's the offensive pieces, and there are the utility, like hybrid pieces. Okay, the defensive slots are shoulders, chest, pants, and boots. The offensive pieces are weapons, offhand, rings, gloves, and amulet. The hybrid pieces are the helm, the bracers, and the belt. Now, there are going to be situations where maybe there's one piece for a specific build or class that can focus on something else, but in general, this is how you want to gear. Also remember that this is a pretty decked out witch doctor. I guess he's pretty geared, but you can clear Torment 1, Torment 2 in just all rares. You don't need to have these legendary items. You just need to have really well rolled rares. Now, rares roll 4 primary attributes and 2 secondary attributes. And this is the same thing with legendaries as you see here, right? We have 4 primaries and then 2 secondaries. Now the goal for gear is obviously you do rifts, you get blood shards. You look at the worst piece of gear that you have on, you go to Kadala, and then you buy that slot. And these are all level 70 rares, and each piece of gear is going to have the 4 primaries and 2 secondary affix. So your goal is to look for pieces of gear that fit your needs in at least 3 of the 4 primary slots. Okay, so for instance, we'll just do I don't know, shoulder. Okay, let's say that I want intelligence, vitality, armor, and spell damage, or like a skill damage, like zombie thing, right? Zombie bears. So I have 3 of the things I have right now, but I'm missing the zombie bear skill. That is still a good piece because I can re-roll at the mystic the missing attribute. Okay, I can re-roll the percentage life for zombie bears, right? So I put in here percentage life, change that, and I can keep re-rolling until I get whatever the skill is that I'm missing. So that should be your goal with rares. Find pieces that fulfill most of the criteria, and if they're down like one attribute, then that's fine. You take that piece and you keep re-rolling the stats on that piece until it fits your need. Okay, and because they're rares and not legendaries, it's going to be very affordable, easy for you to do, as opposed to re-rolling legendaries. Alright, so now let's talk about each of the slots, the different columns of skills they fit in, and how to deal with them. So let's first talk about the defensive set of items. Once again, the defensive slots are shoulders, chest, pants, and the boots. The reason why these are the defensive slots is because offensive skills like crit hit and crit damage, they cannot fit into these slots. They're unable to roll in them. So you need to make the most out of the defensive properties of those slots. So the skills you want in all your defensive slots are the primary stat, some mixture of the following: vitality, percentage life, armor, and all resist. Okay, so that is primary stat and then 4 possible other things, and you just want to get at least 2 or 3 of them. Okay, so as you can see on this shoulders, I have primary stat, I have intelligence, I have vitality, I have percent life, and I have armor. So this is actually a pretty good piece. But another rule of thumb is you should always try to aim for your gear to reach into the upper 25% of rolls. So as you can see here, I'm holding control to look at the possible rolls, the range that my item fell into. And the intelligence could have rolled 500 max, 416 minimum. So I'm in the lower 50%. If this rolled 475 or 480, I'd say that this is a really good intelligence roll. And my vitality roll is also pretty low. If it rolled 475, that'd be pretty good. My life percentage is good, and the armor is perfect. So this is a pretty decent pick. Okay, the intelligence and vitality is on the low side, so I could re-roll or make more, or find an improvement here, but this is not a bad choice. Now the shoulder is has a unique property of also providing bonus percent damage to certain spells. So you can see here Fetish Army, Piranha's Gargantuan. So if I'm at a level where I feel like my resistance and my life is okay, it's very possible that you can re-roll this to have reduced cooldown or 15 additional damage to a skill. So, and that's all going to be class dependent. But for the most part, you want to keep this as a defensive slot. The chest, like all other gear pieces, you want intelligence, You also want some effective health, whether it be vitality, armor, all resistance, and you want 3 sockets always. You must have 3 sockets on this piece. Okay, and you can see the one I have here rolled pretty well. So we got intelligence, we got vitality, we got armor, which are all things that I want in a defensive slot, and it has 3 sockets. So this is pretty much a perfect piece. Pants are similar. You want your primary stat, life, resist, some kind of mitigation, and 2 sockets. So this is also a good piece. I have intelligence, vitality, although they are rolled very low, resistance, and 2 sockets. And the last piece for the defensive pieces are the boots. And for boots, you want the same thing, except no sockets, because you can't get sockets. So you want intelligence, vitality, resistance, and like I said earlier, we can replace movement speed. So the piece I have here is pretty decent, although I could probably re-roll intelligence or vitality and hope to get a higher value on it, like maybe 480 intelligence or 450 vitality, something like that. Or I can change the movement speed to, like the shoulder, I can change the movement speed to a particular type of damage. But these skills are not skills that I use very often except for fire bats, and I still wouldn't re-roll it for damage. So those are those slots. Okay, pretty straightforward. Now we're going to move on to the offensive slots. Once again, the offensive slots are main hand, offhand, rings, gloves, and amulet. Now, one thing to note, the offensive stats you're looking for are damage, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, increased attack speed, and possibly cooldown reduction. And of course you want your primary stat. Things like critical hit damage and critical hit chance are very important, and you want those on every piece of gear you can get because they increase your damage by so much. Okay, so let's look first with the rings and the jewelry, the rings and the amulet. These are pure damage slots, so things like vitality and life percentage, you don't care about that. You just want damage. Okay. Rings roll 50% critical hit damage max. Okay, that's the max. So if you get the amulet and the 2 rings with 50% damage each, that's 150% additional critical hit damage. That would be pretty ideal and pretty rare, but you can see you can get a good percentage of your critical hit damage just from those 3 slots. So you should do your best to max that out. This ring is actually pretty bad in terms of stats because it doesn't have critical hit chance. Remember, you want critical hit damage, critical hit chance, primary stat, right, which is a tribute for me, or intelligence for me, and maybe attack speed. So this would be a very good ring if I maybe was able to re-roll the chance to deal 18% area damage to critical hit chance. Okay, but this is the Ring of Royal Grandeur. It gives me set bonuses, so it's actually, this works out pretty well actually. Here's another ring that's good, but does not fit the mold of traditional rings because it's missing the critical hit damage and critical hit chance. So it's actually limiting my DPS by a lot, but it has 20% elemental damage and increased damage against elites. Stone of Jordan, probably one of the best rings in the game, if not the best ring in the game. So yeah, it doesn't fit the criteria, but oh well. Now here's my amulet. Now this amulet is a lot better than the other slots, and as you can see here, it has primary attribute intelligence, which is kind of low, attack speed, critical hit damage, which is pretty decent, critical hit chance, which is perfect. So this is a very good looking amulet in terms of itemization. Okay. The last slot, or well, there's a couple more slots. Gloves is the actually only armor piece that is aggressive. On gloves, you want primary stat, attack speed or cooldown reduction, critical hit damage, and critical hit chance. Now these gloves are actually not that great. They do have pretty nice critical hit damage, decent attack speed, decent okay intelligence. They would be much better if the vitality was critical hit chance. But because these are very important for the increased attack speed of your pets by 45%, happens to be very, very important for witch doctors, so we'll let it go here. But yeah, so these are decent gloves. The weapon. On the weapon, you want primary stat, the highest paper damage, and a socket. Okay, those, you might want like increased attack speed or elemental damage if you can get it, but in general, those are the three things you want. And here, this is a pretty well itemized item. You can see I have the damage 2,402, which is good white damage for a one-hander. I have the intelligence rolled on. I could probably re-roll for higher. Well, no, that looks like it's a good upper echelons of intelligence. And I have a socket. I'm not sure what to socket, but I'm pretty sure that you always should socket, put green gems into your sockets for weapons. Okay. There might be some classes where you want to put red, but for the most part, you want to increase your critical hit damage. Because basically, critical hit damage by 125 or 130%, that is like wearing 2 rings, more than 2 rings. Like that's like your entire 3 pieces of jewelry on one weapon. Okay. For the offhand, same thing. You want critical hit chance, intelligence, and damage. Well, it depends on what the thing is. Maybe damage or attack speed. I don't know. It depends on what your second. If it's a second weapon, you want a socket, or if it's an offhand. So we won't really talk about too much about this, but this is pretty much a flex slot. So those are the offensive pieces. Now the last 3 pieces are the hybrid pieces. That's the belt, the bracers, and the helm. And those are called the hybrid pieces because sometimes you want defense out of it, and sometimes you want offense out of it, and sometimes you want both, or some type of utility. So we'll talk about the belt first. The belt usually wants primary stat, vitality, some kind of damage increase, and some kind of mitigation. So for here, we have this waist guard gives intelligence, which is kind of low, vitality, which is average, attack speed, which is low, and increased damage against elites, which is very nice. Now this is not an ideal belt, but it is okay. And there are a lot of good legendary belts out there. But until you get one of them, like Witching Hour or Harrington Waistguard, until you get one of them, you should stick to legendary belt, or you should stick to rare belts that give you your primary stat, vitality, maybe attack speed if they have them, and then whatever else your stat you're lacking. So if you're lacking all resist, maybe you should try to find it on a belt. You know what I mean? And let's see if we can roll all resist. Well, no, probably. Well, we can't roll all resist on this one because of the secondary resist, but oh well. For the bracer is one of the only slots that run elemental damage overall. So you should try to always get elemental damage, primary stat, vitality or mitigation. So that means all resist, life percentage, health, and critical hit chance. Bracer is also one of the only spots that has critical hit chance, so you should also try to get it on there. So with this particular piece of gear, we have a nice roll. We have the elemental damage, we have the primary stat, which is intelligence, we have vitality, which is our defensive stat, and then we have critical hit chance. So this is a good roll. Lastly is the helm. On the helm, you want intelligence, some sort of defensive stat, whether it be resistance, vitality, or whatnot, and and then a socket. The reason I typically go for the socket, and the reason why I go for the socket is because when you gem it, you can usually gem it for greater value than you would elsewhere. So here I can get my cooldown reduction by 12%, which is not something that I can, and I can actually get it up to like 14%, but this is not something that I can do on any other slot of gear, so, or affix. So that is why I did it here. Now ideally, I have two defense, as you can see here, I have vitality and resistance to all elements. So I could probably re-roll the vitality to something like critical hit chance, because Helm is also another spot that has critical hit chance, and it should always be my goal to try to maximize that. But, oh yeah, you know, actually I should. I'm actually pretty high on life right now, but I won't do it right now. We'll probably do it some later time. But yeah, so this vitality I probably should roll till I get critical hit chance. Okay. Now there are exceptions to the rule. There are going to be times when you want gear to not have those kind of things, but for the most part, that's how you want to decide the gear. So those are the hybrid slots. There are items that will improve other affixes, like Mage Fist is an elemental glove, or a legendary glove, and it also gives elemental damage on it. So that's 5 primary affixes. So you can get elemental damage, primary stat, increased attack speed, critical hit damage, and critical hit chance on one piece of gear. So, you know, play around, look at legendaries that catch your eye, and, you know, keep those in mind as you farm gear. But first, let's get you into that farming mode. So what I suggest is find the pieces that are worse, like the worst pieces you have, and spend your blood shards on those pieces. If you don't get a legendary that's good, then look at the rare items that Kadala gives you. Find one that fits 3 out of the 4 things that I told you to look for, and then use that piece of gear and enchant it till that 4th slot that is a attribute you didn't like finally ends up being one of the attributes that you do like. The last thing I'm going to talk about right now is effective health and life total and kind of just mitigation in general. So as you can see here, I have 620,000 health. That's actually a lot of health for a witch doctor, I think. And the reason why I say that is because you need to find a balance between your health pool and your mitigation. So let's take this scenario. Let's say that I only stack vitality. I don't care about all resists. I don't care about armor. All I do is put my points into vitality and life. So let's say I have 1,000,000 life, and let's say a mob hits me for 100,000 damage a hit. That means I can survive 10 hits, or well, on the 10th hit I'll die if I have 1,000,000 life, right? Now let's say that I have some points in life, but then I also have a bunch of points in armor and all resist and mitigation. So let's say I'm at 500,000 life instead of 1,000,000 life, but I have 50% mitigation. Okay. What that'll do is if I get hit by a mob that does 100,000 damage, I'll only take 50,000 damage, right? So at 500,000 life, which is half the life, because remember, it was 1,000,000 life originally, it will still take 10 hits to kill me, right? Okay, so as you can see here, 500,000 life and 1,000,000 life, they're the same if the mitigation can balance that out. Now, why is that important? Like, well, I mean, why have to balance it if I can just put all the points into life, right? The reason why is because effects like life on hit and the life globes, they are greater the lower your life total is. Like, let's say your health globe heals for 50,000 life, okay? let's say that. If you have 1,000,000 life and you take a hit and you go down 100,000 life hit and you go down to 900,000 and you heal for 50,000, that puts you at 950,000. So you basically healed for 5% and you're back up to 95%, right? Now let's say you're at 500,000 life. You get hit for 150,000, but you have the mitigation, so you only take 50,000. So you go from 500,000 to 450,000. Now, when you get that life pot, the 50,000 life pot, it goes from 450,000 to 500,000, which completely fills up your life, your pool, which is a 10% increase in healing. Or, well, I mean, a 10% value of healing. So you can see that that value doubled. Okay, and that's an important aspect of health that you need to know as you progress into higher levels in the game. Okay, having a big life pool is nice, but you need to make the most out of like the health globes that you can pick up so that you can refill that health bar completely. And that's why mitigation is important, and having a smaller life pool is better, because then the effect of each of those globes is bigger. Okay? But remember that you can't also just forget vitality. If I have 100%, or I don't know what the cap is, but let's say I have 70% mitigation or something, but I only have 200,000 life. If I get hit by 100,000 hit, or whatever, like I still gotta make sure that I survive the hit. Okay, so I mean, health does matter to some extent. I would say being somewhere between 300 to 450,000 health is usually a good good benchmark, as long as your resist and armor are growing with the content. Like you see here, like I have really crazy resist because of the intelligence, but I'd say if you were at like 800 to 900 resist, you'd be in pretty good shape. So yeah, that's pretty much gearing in general. In the description, what I will do is, because you might have just forgotten everything I told you, I will put suggested attributes that you should be looking for each that I went over in the video. And if you want more info on each of those slots, then rewatch the video for more info, or leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching.